This is my introduction to Sailing Wilson on YouTube. I'm Captain Wannabe Ian. Yes, I do have a sailing certificate. In fact, I have two. Whether I can sail or not is another story. I own a 2013 Island Spirit catamaran, 38 foot in length, and I really love my boat. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people you know. I'm currently on the hard stand at Reback Island Shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Reback Island is a resort island just off the main island of Langkawi in Malaysia. Here's a Google Earth image of my boat just beside the blue dot on the hard stand, and here's a photograph of my boat just after I finished putting the copper coat on. I've still got a lot of work to do. This video is about applying the copper coat underneath the areas where the stands were, and here is a picture of the boat when it first went onto the stands, and all the problems that I had. Major water leaks in the bows and sterns, and we had to completely strip back the copper coat, find the problems and repair the leaks, and then apply copper coat. So when that was all done and a whole heap of other jobs were done, I began the process of moving the stands, and to do that I moved all my tools and materials to the back of the boat, and the travel lift, supervised by Jamal, the crew boss, picked the boat up, and here you see them putting the slings in place so that they can lift the boat. Now I must say that the old stands were placed in the areas where the bulkheads were, so the strongest point of the boat. But when I had to move the stands to paint the copper coat on, the problem was to locate the stands in areas where the bulkheads were, or strong areas. And after a discussion with Jamil, we decided to put on 2 extra stands, one on either side, and they balanced the boat and tightened up the stands and made sure that the weight was evenly distributed. And here you see the slings in place, and the plastic placed on the slings so that it wouldn't scratch the boat when the boat was lifted. So you'll see a small stand in the centre of the picture, which went on both the starboard and port bows, and similar stands were placed on the stern of the boat. While the boat was up, we put the rudder back in. So there was a bit of a lip inside where the boys had to clear that, and that was their excitement. And then I didn't want the rudder too high up so that I could adjust and fit the brackets in place inside the engine room. So here you see the boys fiddling with the right size or the right height of each of the stands, and they spent a fair amount of time getting that right, and putting in blocks and rubber cushions so that it wouldn't scratch the bottom of the copper coat. Jamal and I checked to make sure the rudder wasn't jammed and was freely loose, and here you see the middle stands going in and adjusted with rubber supports and plastic so that it wouldn't damage the copper coat. The front stand was also done, and then it was a matter of just wandering around and making sure they were happy with the work that's done. And then Jamal got back on his travel lift. Because I had extra stands, they brought the forklift over with a pallet of wooden blocks and other rubber fittings, and that had to be moved before the travel lift was moved out of the road. Here you can see a close-up of the different stands and the wooden blocks and supports underneath the wooden blocks. And then Jamil finished by lowering the straps and taking them off, and then moving the forklift out and away from the boat so that I could start work on the copper coat. Most people, while the boat is lifted on the travel lift, do a quick rush job on cleaning up underneath the stands and painting on the anti-foul, and give it a couple of hours to dry and then splash the boat. But unfortunately for me, or fortunately for me, it costs 500 baht extra to move the stands, and there's a reason for that. The copper coat needs to not only dry but cure. So then I went about putting on the copper coat and taking my time and letting it cure properly, and then I splashed the boat about a week later. All the time I was on the hard, I had a continual problem of the sockets and plugs getting overheated with too many amps running through the wiring, and I had to repair not only the waterproof box for the plugs, but also the electrical box on top of the air compressor, which became overheated at times. And here you can see the capacitors in that little black box had blown out. So I approached the people that I bought the air compressor off, and they'd run out of capacitors. So fortunately I found a spare capacitor in the junk heap, would you believe, the white one just to the right of the blue damaged one, and that I replaced, and the air compressor worked fine. So then I got using the air compressor, and I ground out the old copper coat back to the fiberglass hull, and I used a number of tools to do that. Because the copper coat was really tough to get off, I used the large orbital disc, a 7-inch disc. Here it is in a picture, that you connect to the hose and to the air compressor, and that spins a lot faster. And using 40 grit sandpaper cut to size, I ground out all the areas the old stands were. So then I proceeded to using a lighter weight sandpaper on the little air sander. I sanded it back nice and smooth and prepared the area, and you can see in this video how that came up alright. And I was able to then epoxy the bottom of the boat, where the stands were, with 2 layers of epoxy, fairly thick, and then sand it off again to get a smoother finish, so the area was ready to apply the copper coat. You can see in this video the nice and shiny areas with the sanded epoxy ready for applying the copper coat. And then it was time to apply the copper coat, and I had half a kit left over from when I did the main job, and I mixed parts A and B, added the copper granules and kept it stirred while I painted it on. I put on 3 thick coats of the mixture, and the finished job turned out okay, but you can see a colour difference, but the fish don't mind, so that's okay. Video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of me moving the stands and applying the copper coat to the whole out progress report number 35.